If we could have roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Present.
Alderman Clark.
Here.
Alderman Mayberry. Absent. Alderman Spargettis.
Present.
Alderman Talanair.
Here.
Alderman Parker.
Here.
Alderman Shipp. Pending. Mayor
Here.
Tomes. Yes.
Here.
Mayor Tomes, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Just, I guess, as a quick reminder, we'll do item 3, but we do have one council member is on the phone calling in, and sometimes there's a little delay in him hearing us or him speaking, and so when we are looking for response and everything else, some roll calls and that, we can listen for that, but there will be a slight delay. But hopefully not too noticeable. Tim's got it under control there. Item number 3.
Alderman Shipp notified the city through the city clerk, Judith Gilbert, that he would not be physically present for the meeting tonight due to a work commitment out of town, and made a request to participate remotely per city ordinance.
Motion to allow Alderman Shipp to participate in the council meeting remotely.
Second.
Moving second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is moved. Josh, you're part of it. All right.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance and a moment of silence, please. We could have a moment of silence, please. Thank you very much. We have item number 6.
Minutes of the December 11th, 2017 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes as printed.
Second.
Moving second. Any discussion? Not quite yet. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Josh. All right. Item number 7.
As it relates to our agenda, I'd like to make an amendment to our agenda that we move item number 23 to have it come after item 8 for the purposes of, we have a consultant here, and to help with city finances to get the discussion earlier in the conversation.
Second the motion.
Moved in second. Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Josh. All right.
Oh, I voted aye.
All right. Apologize. Okay, item number 7 is update Rock Island. I got a couple items. One is holiday observance schedule. In observance of the holidays, City Hall will be closed Monday, December 25th, Tuesday, December 26th, and Monday, January 1st. The refuge and recycling schedule during the weeks of December 25th and January 1st, 2018, will be one day late both weeks. The city's libraries will be closed Sunday, December 23rd, and Monday, December 25th. For more information, please visit www.rigov.org. The City of Rock Island wishes everyone a very happy and safe holiday. Winter Spring Activities. Talking about spring there. Winter Spring Activity Guide. The new Winter Spring Activity Guide from the Park and Rec Department is now out. Check out the many activities available, including Dad and Daughter Date Night, Spring Egg Hunt, cooking classes, and many other events and activities. To see the complete list of the many opportunities available, go to www.rigov.org. Bald Eagle Days. Join thousands of residents and visitors as they turn out for the Bald Eagle Days at the Quad City Expo Center, Friday, January 5th, 2018, from 4 to 8 p.m. Saturday, January 6th, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and Sunday, January 7th, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. This year's show will include many activities, booths and vendors which make a great fun and value for the whole family. Tickets are $6 for adults, $1 for children between the ages of 6 and 15, and kids under 6 are free. I'd also like to make a mention about Christmas trees. The City of Rock Island will offer free Christmas tree collection from December 27th, 2017 through January 6th, 2018. Christmas trees should be placed at the normal garbage set-out point on the Citizens Garbage Collection Day. Christmas ornaments, lights, and stands must be removed from all trees. Trees must be placed at least 3 feet from the garbage carts to guarantee collection of both the Christmas tree and the garbage carts. Separate trucks will pick up these trees. So it's a way to dispose of that. And that's all I have. So then we got a proclamation.
Proclamation declaring January 2018 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month.
I don't believe there's anybody here.
There is.
Oh, there is.
The three ladies.
Excuse me. So if you wish to get up there, I'll read this and then present it to you, and you can make a statement. Get through this. Whereas the United States was founded upon the principle that all people are created with the unalienable right to freedom, and added the 13th Amendment to the Constitution making slavery illegal, and whereas human trafficking is modern-day slavery, claiming millions of victims worldwide and found in the United States most often in the form of sexual exploitation, forced labor, involuntary servitude, and debt bondage, and whereas this horrific crime, which denies human dignity and freedom and fuels organized crime, exists, and where even though awareness of this crime is growing, human trafficking continues to go unreported due to its isolating nature and misunderstanding of its definition, and the lack of awareness about its indicators. And whereas increased community education on how to identify victims of human trafficking, along with the increased knowledge of local resources and services for those affected by these criminal actions, can help restore freedom and dignity to identified survivors, as well as help diminish the number of future victims. And whereas fighting human trafficking is a shared responsibility, the efforts of our local community to promote the yearly observance of Human Trafficking Awareness Month in January enacts one of the examples of the continuous commitment in the United States and the state of Illinois to increase awareness of and to actively eradicate human trafficking, and whereas the City of Rock Island joins Breaking Traffic, a program of family resources, in their dedication to providing community outreach and education, legislative advocacy, and comprehensive services to survivors of human trafficking. Therefore, I, Mike Tomes, Mayor of the City of Rock Island, do hereby proclaim January 2018 as Human Trafficking Awareness Month.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the City of Rock Island in joining Breaking Traffic and Family Resources in recognizing January as Human Trafficking Awareness Month. Breaking Traffic and Family Resources offers services to survivors of human trafficking in Rock Island County. Tonight I have with me Jane Hoffman. She is a member on our advisory council for Breaking Traffic. And I also have Rebecca V., who is a survivor advocate with Breaking Traffic. So I just wanted to once again thank you for your time and your commitment to eradicating human trafficking.
Can you provide for Rock Island County are there some statistics? I don't think people realize how human trafficking affects us locally. We can think about it nationally, but what are some local statistics?
Well, locally, we know that last fiscal year, so July 1st of 2016 to June 30th of 2017, in the Quad Cities, we were able to serve 39 survivors of trafficking. And that was just for our program alone. Obviously, survivors come into contact with lots of different resources and service providers in our community, but these individuals were actually screened and referred to services. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right. Now, if we could have item 23, please.
Report from the Community and Economic Development Department regarding an ordinance amending Chapter 11 of the Code of Ordinances, combining the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission into one Planning and Zoning Commission. First reading.
Move to deny the request to combine the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission, and instead to consider alternate option number 2, making both the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission recommending bodies to the City Council.
Second.
Move to second, but I believe we have a few people that we can speak about this, part of the discussion.
Thanks. Just for some background, and you can also see in your reading that we heard from the public and elected officials that our zoning code and land development regulations needed to be updated. And so we hired Ansel and Glink in 2015 to assist the city in doing those updates. One of the proposals is to combine the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission into a Plan and Zone Commission. This board would hear all requests, including variances and zoning changes. And so with me, I have David Silverman. He is with Ansel and Glink. He is certified by the Institute of Certified Planners, and he's a practicing lawyer. So I thought it would be good to have you here in case there's any questions from the council about the recommendations that you're seeing. So if you have any questions, here's David.
I'll defer to the attorney, but I do know that there's a motion and a second on the floor to just jump to consideration of maintaining the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Plan Commission, but making them strictly recommending bodies. I don't know if you want to take a vote on that, or do you want me to review my memo? I can answer questions.
You wanted to have discussion. My understanding is you wanted to have discussion before the vote. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, I know that
Fine.
this discussion has happened before I was appointed to city council through elections, so I feel like catching up a little bit up to speed for those
Sure.
who are familiar with, other than I know Dylan and I are not. Give us a little history and your recommendation, how you
Absolutely.
came to it.
So, first, good evening. It's nice to be before you. We, as Ryan indicated, we were retained by the city to assist in the rewrite of your development codes in 2015. For various reasons, that process has gone on a little bit longer than I think any of us anticipated, but we're hoping to move forward from this point pretty quickly. We did prepare a memo on the specific issue before you tonight, the consolidation of the Board of Zoning Appeals and Plan Commission. And where that comes out of is at the highest level when we're looking at the project, one of the goals is to promote the city's economic development goals and objectives. In our experience, codes play a critical role in the success of a community's economic development goals and objectives. It's for developers, for homeowners who just want to build an addition onto their house or a deck or whatever. It's really a key point of contact for them when they're dealing with the city at any level. And it's one of the most frequent points of contact for people who come to the city for some type of entitlement. And zoning certainly is one of those entitlements, as is subdivision relief, perhaps economic development incentives. But all of these things need to work in concert. So when we're looking at zoning codes, and the City of Rock Island zoning code, development codes, there's similar examples of them around the state of Illinois. And many communities operate with multiple development review bodies. However, if we're keeping an eye on efficiency while protecting due process rights, it's important to figure out ways where you can streamline operations. And streamlining comes in a couple different forms. It comes in the form of your application materials, how your code is presented to the public. Is the code easy to understand? Does it make use of tables and graphics appropriately? Do your application materials use flowcharts? Do they have checklists? Those are all things that promote efficiency and create what we like to call a certainty of process. That's not a guarantee of process, so it doesn't guarantee a result. But to someone who's looking to make an investment in the community, perhaps a substantial investment in a planned development, a mixed-use planned development of commercial, retail, residential, is the city's development process rational? Does it make sense to them? Is there a discernible outcome date? So those are things that we look at. And one way to really move a process along is to minimize the number of bodies that an applicant has to go before to seek the necessary zoning relief for their public hearing. In addition, for the public, it's a convenience because then they don't necessarily have to go to multiple meetings if they have a strong interest in the project. So by consolidating the two bodies, you achieve that. And you can typically move projects along at a quicker pace. So that's kind of where we come at this. And our approach and recommendations come from several sources and philosophies, including planning and development best practices. We work with a lot of communities on these issues, so we keep up on the planning literature, the development literature pretty regularly. As Ryan noted, I am in a past life a practicing planner. Greg Jones, who's closely working with me on the project, is also in a previous life prior to selling our souls to become lawyers, planner. We also have Tesca Associates helping us with a lot of the graphics and the bulk regulations for the individual district regulations that we will be preparing soon. We do have experiences in several communities. I never want to say that any community is similar to other because every community is unique in its own way, but nonetheless, there are similar challenges that communities across Illinois face. And we represent a lot of communities in northern Lake County, so we're familiar with competition for sales tax base, for property tax base with Wisconsin. And certainly some of those challenges exist on the west side of the state with Iowa. And so positioning yourself in such a way that you can attract as much investment capital as possible through proactive, well-conceived development codes is critical to your economic development goals and objectives. We also want to build value at each stage of the development review process. So what does that mean? That means getting rid of extraneous processes that you just don't need to have, but still preserving due process and creating a legally defensible position for yourself. That is often lost in a lot of these projects, but we try to keep it in mind. Are we building value? Is this really going to do something positive for the city in the long run? I already talked about the certainty of process. Again, that's not a guaranteed result, but an easy to understand, legally defensible process with an end result. Promote efficiency, and then, as said, making the city competitive for investment. So I've gotten into a lot of the reasons why we want to, why we're at least recommending that the city consider combining its Board of Zoning Appeals and Plan Commission. As from our memo, we're suggesting a 9-member Planning and Zoning Commission. The members would be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of City Council, which is how you do it anyway. These would start with staggered terms and then evolve into 5-year terms off the initial staggered term. I've talked about how applicants seeking multiple forms of zoning relief would then only have to go before one body. You would also, we're also suggesting that you do make them review recommending bodies, this Planning and Zoning Commission a recommending body, and keep the final decision-making authority within the legislative discretion of the City Council. One of the reasons for that is when you're acting in your legislative capacity on anything, you're acting at your highest legal level. We all understand, if we're in government, we all understand separation of powers. So it's not for the court to come in and second-guess your legislative determinations on what's right and wrong for your city. So we would recommend that the Planning and Zoning Commission be a recommending body with, again, final legislative discretion in City Council. This also builds accountability in the process. After all, you are the elected officials of the city. You would be making determinations on development projects that could have significant impacts, positive, perhaps negative, but typically if you have a good process in place, you'll receive a good recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission that's based upon understandable factors in a new zoning code, and you'll be in a good position to make a very good determination for the benefit of the city. And about that issue of running public hearings. complex zoning decisions can be very difficult to work through, but if you have a body that meets fairly regularly and is dealing with your zoning code on a regular basis, they get very familiar with how it works. And you start building a certain consistency in your process. And with that, you get better recommendations that enable you in the future to make better determinations as said on development projects that would come before you. At the end of the day, this is a policy decision that's best left to the mayor and city council. We are your consultants. We try to understand a lot of the issues that are affecting the city. We've held stakeholders meetings. We've held open houses. We've met with residents. But there are still policy issues. There are still political issues that we may not be completely sensitive to, and we understand that. So it is a recommendation. We defer to the wisdom of the mayor and city council on these things, which is why there are the three options, one of which is actually the basis of a motion right now. The three options are as follows. You would preserve the BZA and the Plan Commission in their current forms. And there could be very valid reasons that we may not, again, completely appreciate why you want to do that, but that is certainly available to you. Option two, which is the option that's subject to the motion that's on the floor right now, is to make them both recommending bodies. And I've already kind of gone over why that makes sense. So they would still, your BZA, your Plan Commission, we might want to suggest some recommendations for how you split the responsibilities between the two entities. But regardless, at the end of the day, they would make a recommendation to you based on their jurisdictional purview of your zoning code. And then the legislative discretion of the city is left to the city council. And again, it puts you in your strongest legal position if someone wants to challenge that zoning decision. I'm not saying you're going to win it every time, but at the same token, again, when you act legislatively, you're acting in your strongest position. Option three is to expand the Plan Commission's review authority, and in the memo that's in your packet, there was a typo. I think we said BZA's review authority. You would expand the Plan Commission's review authority. So where there's applications seeking approval of multiple zoning requests that would currently go before both the Plan Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals, that would just all stay to the Plan Commission. So you would create a streamlined effect that way. At this point, I'm ready for any questions.
So you said that you've had public hearings,
No public hearings.
but you've met with residents.
We held open houses probably about a year and a half ago, and we met with stakeholders that were identified by staff. So, yeah.
And what was the feedback?
A lot of the feedback had to do with the city's competitive position vis-a-vis Bettendorf, Iowa, what's been, where development trends have been going even in Illinois, in the Quad Cities area on the Illinois side. There was a lot of concern about that. There was feedback about precisely some of the things I'm talking about tonight, streamlining the development approval processes, making them more readily understandable, rationalizing the roles and responsibilities of the different bodies that are involved in that process.
Okay. So it wasn't just everyday residents. These were stakeholders that had been through the process, that understand the process, understand the two bodies?
That was our understanding. And you'll forgive me. It taxes a little bit of my memory on some of these things because it does go back at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years at this point.
If I remember right, and I'm not, whether you or whether it's Brian, the number of times that these boards have met, I think it was like 26 different issues. I think last year for the BZA.
I will defer to Rob.
Yeah.
Yes, I think in 2016 there was 26 cases through the BZA, and in 17 there has so far been 20. And the Planning Commission has met 4 times and had 4 cases. Yeah, 2016 was 26, 2017 was 20 with the BZA. The Planning Commission has had 4 cases in 2016, and they've had 4 cases in 2017.
Last 2 years have been pretty consistent, but yeah.
Right. And one of those cases was to discuss this issue, so we have had public input on that level also.
And how was that public input, positive or negative?
I think all public input was good, but the recommendation was negative from the board.
But just so there's, I guess, some talked about whether the workload, so to speak, when add, onto the council, that sort of thing. It's total of around 30 issues or so.
Not, sorry to interrupt.
That's fine.
It's an interesting point. I mean, your BZA obviously is very busy. Your Plan Commission is not as busy, so there's a couple ways to remedy that, of course, and one of them, again, is expanding their jurisdictional purview over your zoning code, or, again, perhaps considering the situation, maybe merging them with your Board of Zoning Appeals. And again, there's value in that because the more times a recommending body meets with jurisdictional purview and the responsibility of holding public hearings, they're going to run better hearings, they're going to make better recommendations because they're going to become very familiar with your codes and how they operate. When a body doesn't meet as frequently, that's not the fault of the body, that's just because whatever they're supposed to be reviewing, there's just not a lot of that going on. Now, our goal here, of course, is to create codes that do attract investment. That's part of the process. That's part of the strategy. So if you ultimately decided to keep your Plan Commission in its current form, we would hope that we could generate a lot of work for them.
And that could involve more involvement in planning?
Sure. Sure. Plan Commissions, between the two bodies, the Plan Commission is probably your most malleable body. You have a lot of discretion in the statutes, plus your home rule anyway. But the statutes give a lot of discretion to how you want to form your Plan Commission, the types of roles and responsibilities that you want it to do. The ZBA, the Board of Zoning Appeals, I'm used to ZBAs, but Board of Zoning Appeals, that's set out in statute, and that's pretty specific. It has to be 7 members. They hear variations, and that's what they do. And they can either be vested with final decision-making authority, which your BZA has some final decision-making authority. Oh, all of it. Okay, yes. I thought it was limited to some extent, but yes. So in that instance, anything that the BZA does that gets challenged legally, as you may know, goes up to the courts on what's known as administrative review. So the only thing the court can look at is the record that's established at the public hearing. Now, your BZA meets pretty frequently, so they're probably pretty good at keeping a good record of what they're doing. And that's what you want. Because you need those you need a good public hearing process that protects due process rights, and if something does get challenged, then you want to make sure that the record that's created with that is as thorough and complete as possible.
Anybody at this point have any questions? Josh, I know you're out there. Do you have any questions?
I have a number of things I'd like
Yes, I would like to say a couple things here. For those council members who were elected in the last cycle here, this issue I know was something you probably saw the previous council discuss with the former administration and council and mayor. I want to say at the start of this, I hope that my colleagues will join me in voting no on the current motion that's been made. I believe that what we are doing here is something that's a little bit out of order. I don't agree with the thought that if we consolidate these boards and take away their authority, that somehow that's going to be the silver bullet that's going to change the game for economic development in Rock Island. I have spoken on this at length previously, and I think the challenges that we're facing are much more systemic in terms of we have entrenched corridors in our neighboring cities that continue to have momentum that the business community is just going to follow through inertia. And overcoming that with consolidating boards, I don't really think is a realistic expectation that that's going to somehow change the game. My concern on this is on multiple fronts, and the way I'll try to summarize it is that we have engaged with our BZA and Planning Commission for years, and I feel like what's coming down in this process is almost like a punishment to say, here's the problem with what's going on, and so we're going to fix it. And effectively, as a city government, the goal we're trying to constantly keep at the forefront is citizen engagement. And I think the BZA and the Planning Commission have been really great opportunities to have really knowledgeable people in the city handle a lot of the business that, frankly, I think is best kept out of the political arena of the council. And to think of all of their business coming back to us as recommendations on, do we want to approve a 4-foot variance on a shed on a property? I mean, at the end of the day, I think that agenda for the council is going to become very tedious, and we're going to have a lot of information that that doesn't necessarily need to come to us, and that we're not necessarily prepared to have a policy debate on, and that historically has been handled pretty darn well through our existing boards. So, again, I don't think this is the way we want to go. I feel like we have, as a council, this is a very serious issue that's going to have a big impact, or could have a very big impact. I think we could look at an alternative strategy of what have we really done to task the BZA or the Planning Commission to work with us in a more effective way. I know we can't lobby these groups directly on specific business that's on their agenda, but in terms of strategizing, in terms of goal setting, in terms of envisioning the path forward for zoning or for the planning of the city for now and in the future. If I'm going to do an honest assessment, I don't think we've done a good enough job as a council in trying to pull that arm of the city into our economic vision. And so that's my case on the situation, and I would encourage my colleagues to vote no on this motion and vote no to the proposed recommendations, and then come up with a different strategy.
So Alderman Talonier here. Hey, I probably misunderstood what you meant. Alderman James Spurgettis made a motion for a different alternative. The way I interpret what you said is you're against the motion as it was written on the agenda, not as what Alderman Spurgettis suggested. We made a motion on. Am I right there, or am I wrong?
If we could have the motion reread, that would help clarify.
Sure. And I'm not sure what Alderman Shipp's understanding was, but I do believe you're right. There's a distinction between the motion that was made and what was printed as the recommendation on the agenda. But
right.
I'm not certain how that translated through the transmission.
Right.
I'd like to say just a word or two about the motion first. My motion was to deny the recommendation to combine the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission, but and that's by the way, to consider the ordinance. It's not to vote to approve the ordinance. And I should say, but to also make both bodies, or at least the Planning Commission is already advisory, to also include the Board of Zoning Appeals as an advisory body to the council. And I meant to include, and I omitted this, and Alderman Clark reminded me, that, and this can be part of the discussion, whether or not the council should be required to have a supermajority to override or to reverse a recommendation from either of those bodies.
And in that regard, I think probably what we need to do then is to have you draw your previous motion and then amend it with that third addition that you want to put on it.
I so do.
And just to clarify it in context, my previous statement still stands. I oppose the motion and this upcoming amended motion as well.
Okay. So then I guess we need the amended motion and the second. And
we need a second.
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay.
And then you withdraw your motion and remake it.
Do you need to withdraw the first motion?
Yes, correct.
I so do.
And then your new amended motion, I need you to state on the record, if you would, please.
And you have to repeat the whole thing?
Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So I voted to deny the recommendation combining the Board of Zoning Appeals and the Planning Commission into one Planning and Zoning Commission, and instead to approve what's listed in our paperwork as alternate option 2, making both the BZA and the Planning Commission recommending bodies to the council with a supermajority to overrule either of their recommendations.
With them just being recommending bodies.
We need a second here. I'll second that.
Thank you.
With them being recommending bodies, we wouldn't be overturning any kind of, recommend. I mean, you're overturning the recommendation, but it's not like currently when they go to the BZA and they have a, concluding decision, it can be appealed to the courts. Can you write the ordinance with language that would require a supermajority vote for issues that are recommended by the Planning Commission or BZA?
I suppose that being home rule that you probably could. Now, as far as what that might mean as far as review goes, obviously then there may be some differing, if something comes through and the recommendation is followed from the commission, I'm guessing you're likely to go through then the administrative review process. I'm sorry, you have a comment on that?
Yeah, so you can do it pursuant to your home rule powers. And in fact, in the statutes do give municipalities the authority to create a supermajority requirement for special uses and variations that receive a certain recommendation that the governing body wants to go against. So that we can model on that. But it would still be a legislative determination, so it would go up de novo.
And James, I'm going to vote against your motion for the purpose of we have an amended zoning ordinance that's been vetted, that's been written. This feels like there's too many things out there. I'm not going to vote on any ordinance that I don't see written down based on your alternative number 2, and then is it recommending or authoritative? I'm going to vote against it. Maybe you want to bring it up later when we have an updated, amended.
Let's call the vote or continue the conversation.
I think we have other people.
I had some questions,
but I'm just stating my position.
There are people also here in the audience who want to discuss this as well. I'd say listen to them before we make up our mind how we're voting.
Do you want to come up?
I know one piece is us listening to or hearing everything that goes before the BZA. We don't want to do that either. So that piece is missing where what cases would actually come to the city council. But also, I don't want to lose the power that we're supposed to have as elected officials to say we are not going to hear any cases and it's dead after it goes to the BZA. I think we are actually obligated to hear certain things that citizens want to bring before us. That's the only problem I have with it. But do I want to hear every case that comes before the BZA? I don't. So I think the mechanism where we have a way of hearing certain cases is missing.
That came up in a study session. You were at the study session, and I was told that we could not discriminate in terms of which cases we wanted to hear and which cases we didn't want to hear. We either had to hear them all or none. I don't know, is that true? I'm asking the city attorney.
I have not researched that subject, but I certainly think that if you start, I guess my gut feeling would be if you start picking and choosing which ones you do and which ones you don't, there could be then arguments of disparate treatment and equal protection arguments, and possibly are.
I think the applicant, if they don't like the answer they got from the BZA or the Planning Commission, they could clearly go and appeal it to council. It comes up, and then it's either in the council, it's a note, it's a report, and then you just say the council votes, and if they get 5 of the 7 votes, it goes their way, and that's the supermajority. It seems pretty clear cut. I mean, it's not going to happen very often. People are just going to take it from the BZA because most of the time you're going to just follow the BZA's recommendation. There's a hell of a lot of talent in our BZA and Planning Commission with those people that have been on it for a long time. And there is a lot of talent there, and we're going to disrupt that talent. And
I agree with what Alderman Clark is saying, too. I do believe that the the city council should have last word on things. But I would like to also hear, Norm, I know you're here to, you're on one of the committees at BCA, and speak about your thoughts.
Okay, Norm Moline, 3836 28th Avenue in Alderman Keenan's ward. And I've spent some time thinking about this, and before I say my comments, and I say that just to remind people, I guess, a little bit of my background here, that I don't just live on that street. As one who was taught the senior level class in urban planning at Augustana College for 4 decades, who has maintained regular contact with many of our graduates who are scattered across the country, who've gone into planning. I was a member of the American Planning Association until my retirement, and as one who served on the Planning Commission for quite a few years. I think I have some background to allow an informed, careful, and critical look at this document. Only 2 days ago did I see the final 4-page summary report from the consultants regarding the merging that we've been talking about. As a Planning Commission member, I was among those who saw the earlier report, which we considered and then soundly rejected 7-1. And I hope you looked at the minutes, and you know who's on the Planning Commission. The people among those 7 who voted against it are some people whom you know are very pro-economic development for Rock Island. And so we don't want it skewed in any way to say, well, the Planning Commission, they're not against development. You know the people on there, and they were among the 7 who voted against it. The PC never was consulted for further input, and it did not see the alternatives which now are at the end of the consultant's report. For such a big thing, it would have seemed to me, at least let's run that by the Planning Commission members for their input. Now, to cover these points, I think you folks have read this, but in case not, when I saw the comments from the memorandum, I was so upset I started to scribble remarks in the side, and so I then summarize the reports and so I made those notes in the margin because I didn't even know until I got that whether I'd even be coming to the meeting. But as you'll see, and I'd like to go through, I then organized my thoughts according to the memo. So maybe you can have those two side by side. And of course, you can read the documents. I was tempted to send them to you ahead of time, but I think the public record needs to say it. I will say at the outset that I am disappointed in the report. In some ways, I've mentioned to some, it almost seems boilerplate because some of the statements that are made really don't describe the Rock Island that I know and I think you know. I hope you reject the proposal or, at the minimum, table it until there can be meaningful consideration of the alternatives, not just by the council, but by some key the Planning Commission, some people involved in development, in real estate, et cetera, et cetera. So going through the document, under background, section 1, the listing of what the PC does is very incomplete. I know that's only background, but wording can mean a lot. Over the years, it has spent a lot of time on corridor plans, neighborhood plans, downtown plans, sign ordinance revisions, plans for the Armory site, etc. For the consultants to lump all of those responsibilities under the phrase, quote, among others, drastically understates what the PC did when it was used by previous planning directors and staff. B, in paragraph 3 of the background section, when it states the combination will, quote, enhance the economic development climate, it simplifies the things that go into good economic development, good development climate. It frankly is bogus to blame a split structure for lack of economic development. There are many communities with this kind of split which are very effective at economic development. Points 2 and 3 in that paragraph are not correct. The responsibilities of these two recommending groups in Rock Island and in other communities have been clear for years, and there already exists expertise and institutional knowledge about these two recommending bodies. C, this is an important point. Under the proposal section, it is very incorrect to imply that developers must go before the PC and the BZA. Unless a developer wants exceptions to the zoning rules and thus applies for a variance, he or she will only have to go before the PC. By far, most cases only involve the PC. I repeat, only when a developer wants to make a case that she or she deserves some kind of exceptions to the zoning rules does an extra meeting become involved. If our zoning rules are to mean anything, one hopes that the number of requests for variances is kept at a minimum. Otherwise, change the zoning rules. The comments made by the consultant that somehow when people come here they see long lists of our rules, I'm not going to debate the pros and cons of that, but if it's the rules that need to be changed, then you ought to address how do we change our zoning ordinance, not to create a structure which simply then can allow and somehow deal with more and more variances. I know enough about planning law to know that one of the things you never want to be accused of is being arbitrary and capricious. What you want to have is valuable stability and predictability. And so therefore the goal would be to have a good planning zoning ordinance with the minimum number of variances. The consultants, when they refer to these two groups, everybody having to go between them, are making the exceptions the rule. They further imply that this takes extra time and thus discourages investment. As noted above, that generalization cannot stand up under careful scrutiny. As stated above, many communities with good economic development have two separate entities. D, the author states it is challenging for board members and commissioners to distinguish between the facts that are pertinent to one another. That's not been the case here in Rock Island. Thank you, Alderman Tolliver, for your comment. I think the people on the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board, they know their stuff very well. That has not been an issue. The BZA members and PCA members, unless they are at their first meeting, understand clearly these distinctions, and if not, they have been and would continue to be informed quickly by the quality planning staff that we have. E, they state that this separation can lead to long and confused meetings. Again, in most instances here, that's not been the case. I don't know if any of us have heard about, oh man, the meetings are so long. I don't think we've heard much of it. That was a comment made by some other people at the Planning Commission meeting. Staff members have done a good job of making these distinctions clear. Of course, for any planning issues, there's always a need to help out average citizens who rarely come to testify in such meetings and can be a little bit intimidated. And that would continue to be the case whether there are one or two boards. Having one board instead of two is not going to make it any easier for average Joe and Betty to come and speak to the group and address an issue. F, at the end of page 2, the consultants refer to the, quote, balkanization of the review process. Here as a geographer, I know that that's a ridiculous and emotionally loaded overstatement. In common use, balkanization refers to when one entity is divided into many parts, such as Yugoslavia into 7 countries. So to have 2 entities instead of one is hardly balkanization. Moreover, it is balkanized, again, only if the developer wants exceptions. G, it states that there would be more meaningful opportunity to participate. That statement cannot be substantiated. Why would it be more meaningful to participate at a combined board meeting than at a PC meeting? People have always had a chance to participate. Again, the consultants state it would decrease the number of meetings, but this has not been an issue for all of those cases when no variances were needed. Don't let exceptions be discussed as usuals. H, to claim that the PC meets sometimes only once or twice a year is simply wrong if you take any view longer than the most recent year. Usually we've met 8 to 9 times a year. Admittedly, the regularity of meetings can vary from time to time. When we are working on plans, though, some of those bigger things that I noted, we have met often in extra meeting, often for long meetings and for long informational gathering sessions with citizens. I recall an early development when we work on land use plans, we as planning commissioners insisted and worked with the staff that we had input sessions at 5 different locations in Rock Island. That's not just meeting once or twice a year. When we are working on these, we've met for those long times. The authors say that our commission conducts less effective meetings. Again, that's not correct. Our commission chair now happens to be David Levin, but there have been others before, always conduct effective meetings. The report claims that our recommendations are less helpful. On what basis can the consultant make that claim? Name one instance when our comments were not helpful. I recognize it a few times, but very few during my long term on the commission. We have taken positions different from the council's wish, but that's the nature of the system. But that is not a case of offering less helpful recommendations. Having different views does not mean being ineffective. It implies that the report then also applies that without practice our proceedings suffer. We have a ton of practical experience on our boards. There's no lack of understanding without practice and not knowing what's up. And last, the case is made that combining the PC and BZA allows elected officials to have all final decision authority. The split system the split system allows the PC and the council to recommend and adopt policy, but then the BZA, like the judicial branch of government, allows appointed people to be the deciders on whether the rules are being or must be followed. We don't elect the Supreme Court. We don't elect the federal courts. They don't make the law. The law is made by the elected officials, and then you have the judicial group, which decides whether or not it's being followed. The two-entity system has been legally clear for decades in planning across the U.S., cited in textbook after textbook. So it doesn't seem accurate to claim that a combination would provide more legal protection. If that were the case, then one would think across the country, split systems would be ended very quickly to get out of legal trouble. Finally, and perhaps most important, the core functions of a good working PC and of a good BZA are vastly different. They should be staffed with people who have different interests and abilities. I know in my case, as I've told some, I'm very interested and I think I'm qualified to deal with planning issues. And then there are others, citizen representatives, who can be very effective and want to serve on the BZA. Fortunately, this city has had a long history of excellent volunteering. Why would we want to decrease the amount of involvement? If they are operating the way they should in a stable or growing community, they each will be busy doing their separate functions. To be frank, under the previous city manager and his subordinate staff, many of these development tasks were going on in a semi-private way, rarely involving the PC. That's the most recent one. Not the case when we go back to when John Phillips was the city manager. But do not let the characteristics of that recent negative period motivate you to make changes to a system which has worked. I thank you for listening to all of that, but again, this is stuff that I've followed carefully and I believe in the city. And so I either hope that you'll turn down the proposal, that's what I would wish, that you'd vote it down, and then commit yourself to let's have some really meaningful dialogue over the next 5-6 months. But at the minimum, if you don't want to turn it down, at least table it until we can have that discussion. I'll be happy to take questions. Again, thanks for listening. I know this is longer than the 5 minutes, but
Norm, is there a pen up there that you could sign put your name and address, please?
Okay, shall do. I wrote it on the back sheet back there.
Yeah, if you could do it right there, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
I have a couple of comments and maybe a question. Much of your discussion was about the consultant's recommendations combining the two bodies. And I want to make it clear that my motion is to reject that, but to leave the two bodies, the BZA and the PC, as they are today and as they have been. So I guess I want to clarify that, with not just with you, but with everybody.
I understand. I think the only difference, and again, I don't have as strong feelings about that, but I have always tended to like it, and even now as I've, over the last 5-6 weeks, thinking about this issue all the more, I like the fact that the BZA has some kind of final authority, partly to not put on your table, as Mr. Shipp said, all these little things about a 2-foot variance, a 4-foot variance. There are some communities, one of our planners that I contacted, he said that some of the things that they have left with the BZA where they have the final authority are on that kind of thing to help ease the agenda of the council. And then when there are issues that somehow are beyond that kind of neighborhood thing, but that requires some careful, as Mr. Geen indicated, to develop, that requires some careful wording in the document to have legally separated what they can and cannot be final. I've always felt that it's good that the PC, I serve on that and I know we're recommending. I will say as an aside on that, I like the supermajority idea. There's been a lot of stability on our planning commission here in Rock Island, and one reason is we feel it's somehow worth our time to come. If it's simply as we put in the time doing that, and in the end it doesn't make any difference because what we do, the council's going to make their decision anyway, so why should we waste time having the hearings? The only way it carries some weight is if we know that, gee, if there's such a strong opinion that the planning commission votes against it, then that should mean, okay, as long as and it's your job to appoint the people on the planning commission, if they're doing their job, you ought to trust them enough, so okay, we can override them, but we're going to have a supermajority. Otherwise, the planning commission may say, what the heck, why should we waste our time?
Let me follow up with, and I agree with you on some of that, but I want to follow up a little bit with some of my comments, and I'll do as quick as I can. It's not my intention to want to review every property setback and all the small things, and I said this in study session when we discussed this. My intention is to have the council have a part of the process in the larger, more important community-wide or community and economic development projects. So if there was a way to separate the small from the large, I would be happy to do that.
And I like this. I mean, that suggests that's one of those kind of things where with some meaningful discussion, I think one could arrive at something that people would say, yeah, okay, that's a good, acceptable, I don't want to say compromise, but it's a good, acceptable way to move forward, giving you maybe a little bit of the authority you'd like.
And the other thing I want to say, because I have the feeling that some people have made comments that they think that this motion is somehow against the BZA or the Planning Commission or saying anything negative about them when it's not. I've worked with both bodies over 20 years ago and supported them and still do, and I agree with Alderman Talonier's comments. So there's nothing pejorative or negative in this motion at all. It's just that we would like to be part of the process, and I think there are several aldermen, I don't know about all of them, who feel the same way. And then one more thing, I don't think that the Planning Commission or the Board of Zoning Appeals always votes unanimously on their cases, do they?
No, it sometimes is split, and you see those votes.
So there are differences of opinion, just as there are around our table.
This one was amazingly, though, I mean, this was, for considering the range of people who were in the 7, that was pretty wide. And I would just comment to your other one. You're right, I've never heard anything negative from you. With all due respect, I'm saying some of the wording in the consultant's document put a more negative cast on the situation than I think it is in Rock Island. And that's why, again, I didn't want to offend anybody, but I think that sometimes that document made me wonder, gee, they ought to spend a little more time maybe talking, getting a sense of the way it really is in Rock Island. I know you did good things, but again, the comments, I wasn't saying any of you have been against it. It's just some of the wording, and maybe they didn't really mean that, but that's the way it's in print. Okay?
Yeah, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your volunteerism and helping with the different committees in the zone planning and zoning. So thank you, Norman, and everybody else that volunteers their time. Ryan, did you have something?
I just wanted to help provide some context. So the reason why the alternatives were presented today, I know that Norm had mentioned that the Planning Commission had not seen them, was because we had heard from the Planning Commission and from the BZA that this was not a well-liked proposal. So we came back with some of these different alternatives. That's why they're here today. If we want to move forward with any of those alternatives, that would need to go to the Plan Commission because it is a change to our land use code. So they would need to hear it again and make the recommendation to you on that new proposal. So I just wanted to clarify that we are still including the bodies and the people that need to be involved.
They would need to hear the motion for alternate 2.
So, for example, if you would like to move forward with that recommendation for alternative 2, it would need to go back to the Planning Commission, and then they would have to come back and whether or not they agree, and then be passed at council.
Probably something that end up tabled here.
Right. So it'd be best if you were to, for example, table it. If that's what you would like for staff to go back to the Planning Commission with, we can make those changes and work with the consultants on the best way to do that. And then we can move that proposal to the Plan Commission, and they would make their recommendation to you.
I'm comfortable with that.
Then probably it's been just as far as we're tabling as opposed to postponing to a date certain. We may wish to choose a date certain rather than table, because sometimes tabling ends up with an item remaining on the table.
So you'd just be advising us and postponing, and we would come back to you studying that recommendation.
Postpone it to maybe in February or something, like a chance for those boards to meet, or in January at some point and talk about the issue.
Whatever is a good date is fine with me.
Well, I'd like to make a few comments,
sure,
too, on the subject.
And real quick, just to further discussion a little bit, since we've had some great comments here. Is there any discussion of trying to understand a little bit what specific? I think Alderman Spargettis, we know what you're looking for. You made the motion, but if it helps to know if there's any other feelings of anything different, so it helped to go back to them with kind of a council recommendation or thoughts, because if it's just one councilman, not everybody that wants that, it's no sense of carrying it much farther. If there's some consensus, and not has to take a vote, but some consensus of at least a good general idea of where to head toward.
Well, my vote is no. I don't really want to table it, and I don't want the City Council to have the final vote over the BZA. I think that gives these land use variances, that puts them into the realm of politics. And that's when we get the not in my backyarders, lobbying their elected officials and saying, well, I don't want a crematorium in my backyard. So, sure, they could do that to the BZA. But this is a much more public body. People know your council members, and they get up in arms about things. I do not think I like the split system that Norm was talking about, where we have our legislative branch and our sort of judiciary branch, where the City Council with the Planning Commission sets the policy, which, side note, I don't think we've been very good at doing recently as a council, as staff, of directing our Planning Commission to come up with policy. The Broadway neighborhoods strategic plan that the Planning Commission made it's 25 years old. It's older than 25 years old. I would like the Planning Commission to revisit some of these very old plans at this time and see what's worked, what hasn't worked. The comment that they're not doing anything, so we may as well consolidate them, is pretty ridiculous. It's on us to charge them with things to do. I would like to have them have a small stipend to attend national planning conferences for professional development. These are the professionals. I don't know much about planning. I don't know much about city planning. I'm an amateur perhaps, but I don't have the time to go to planning conferences, etc. So I rely on the people that we appoint. And I'm just very hesitant, multi-million-dollar company comes in and says, I want to put a a kale farm in downtown Rock Island. Well, that's a pretty terrible plan for zoning purposes, but they know that if they spend money and they lobby this council or whatever, then you potentially are making something that is not currently political. And I'm nervous about that. We've seen this council go back and forth on things like the emergency contractor list, where things like lobbying may have influenced things. So let's not bring this into politics. Let's leave it out. Let's leave it with the authority that we have currently. My vote is a no. I think it's working just fine.
But we're not voting at this point, just giving indications of what we're looking for, the thoughts. Alderman Geeden.
And I think I would agree with the sentiments of Alderman Parker. We have a system set up. Let's provide some resources. Let's revisit it as we beef up and provide support and involve in the planning process. I asked the city manager to say, what does Moline do? Moline has one person who is in charge of zoning appeals, correct? Not a whole board, one individual that makes the ultimate decision.
That's correct. So it's the same hearing officer we use for municipalities.
Yeah, and so I think we have a policy that the council came through in their goal setting about having an engaged community, and this is an opportunity to engage the community, but provide the resources and provide the direction with staff, and to help inform the city council to make best interests in the benefit of Rock Island.
Alderman Shipp.
I'd like to call the motion for a vote.
Okay, I just didn't try to give a direction real quick. Give the other alderman a chance to speak. Then.
Right now, I would like to take Professor Moline's his opinion when he told us maybe it's time for us to stop and come together and have a discussion. Take a little time and have a discussion. I think if the Planning Commission and members from staff sit down and come up, they know what we want. They had a better feeling of what we want. I feel we can come up with a better plan. And just to say to keep it the way it's been going, that's not the feeling of the whole council.
Then move the table.
No, not yet. Or just real quick. We know you're feeling. Alderman Tollineer, do you have any thoughts?
I think a little history has to go back on why we're here today, is because the former council that was here asked for the authority. I mean, and I was a part of it. But that's why we do vote, is because if you get your 4 votes, you get to do it. So, yeah.
So,
well, there's still a motion on the floor that's been called. So, but anyhow,
yeah,
but it hasn't been seconded yet. But
do you want to change?
No, the motion was seconded.
Vote on the motion.
The motion is to table.
no, not yet. No,
your motion.
I can't make that.
No,
Your motion is on the table to make that adjustment. You had option 2, and then you added a little caveat to it. And so that's what's on the table. I don't think that was seconded. I don't believe.
I did. I said.
Oh, you did second. Okay, so we've got moved to seconded. Okay.
Yep.
And so, you want to take a vote?
Do this.
Roll call on that.
So let me
We have to vote on it before we table it, correct? Or can you withdraw?
No.
He could withdraw it if he wanted to, but Alderman Shipp asked for it to be tabled.
Seconded.
No, he asked for the call. He asked for the vote.
Motion to table, would also make a motion
Postpone.
opposed to a date certain, and then that would have to be seconded and that can be voted on prior to
Dave, I can't hear you down here.
I'm sorry. It would be possible for someone to make a motion to table, which could be seconded, and then that would be voted on first prior to the motion that is currently before council. The other option would be to continue it to a date certain, which could be seconded, and then you could vote on that. Oftentimes, the date certain is used as opposed to tabling only because sometimes there's a theory that tabling may leave something out there indeterminately.
Okay, so there's the original motion. There was. Do you have recorded a motion to table, Judith?
That original motion you withdrew and Steve withdrew the second.
You made it second.
Then he made a second.
Motion.
Yes.
There's no motion out there yet to table it or to postpone it.
You know, there is. There was the motion for option 2 plus a supermajority added onto it, and there was a second to that
Right.
motion, is the way I read. And then and if somebody wanted to vote on that, they could, or if someone wanted to make a motion to either table or to postpone to a date certain, that could happen.
Do the gentleman that made the motion, would you like to withdraw or make a motion to table
I
it?
wanna
Before we
vote.
make this vote.
Okay, in the interest of everyone who's here and who's not here and who wants to weigh in on this, I will make a motion to table to a date certain.
Second.
Pick a date.
Postpone, isn't it?
Yes, all right. What did I say?
You said table, you want to
I'm sorry,
postpone.
postpone to a date certain. I mean, I don't know what the best.
How soon
what's
is
the date?
staff?
May 1.
When's the next planning commission?
And I will need some clarification on what I'm bringing back to the
You'll get
planning
it.
commission.
You'll get it.
I'll get it. Okay.
You'll get it.
Good.
Give us a date.
May 1.
May 1.
And I don't know. I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Randy's got
You could just say the next planning commission meeting.
Well, that's
How about May 21st? That's the second meeting in May.
Whatever you want.
Because the planning commission, if it's going to work with staff, is going to take a couple of meetings just to
Correct.
work through a recommendation. Then the planning commission is going to have to vote on that recommendation. So we need, it's 3 or 4 meetings before we can bring it to you. Is that-
understand.
So we need some time.
That would work.
Okay, is there a second for that?
Yes. Second.
Okay. Postpone?
Postponage.
Postpone to the May 21st
All right.
meeting.
No, you're correct. We need a roll call for this, I believe, right? Roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Burgettis.
Yes.
Collinaire.
Yes.
Parker.
No.
Ship.
No.
4 ayes, 2 nays.
Okay,
Motion carried.
motion carries. Thank you very much. And we'll give some direction to
Staff.
the staff to, on what to maybe to look for in the next steps, whether it goes farther. Okay? We're done?
No, we have to vote on his other motion that he changed, his second motion. Is it- No? No? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right. We have item number 9.
Mayor Tomes will close the regular meeting and open a public hearing on a request from Joseph and Kathy Gussie to reestablish a special use permit to operate an architect's office out of the second floor area in their residence at 4510 42nd Avenue.
All right, I would like to close the regular meeting and open the public meeting. Can I ask the applicant, the representative, to come forward? And if you could state your name and address, and go ahead.
My name is Joseph Gussie. My address is 4510 42nd Avenue, Rock Island.
Excellent. Could you raise your right hand? We need a little swearing in. Will you tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Very good. Thank you. Could you give an explanation of your request, please?
My wife and I found a piece of property in Rock Island that we loved and wished to live our lives there. Our lives include my business, which is the Joseph Architectural Group, and our 4 very active kids. And we felt that running the business out of the home would be beneficial to us in raising these 4 very active kids, and allowing me to spend time with them after school, being able to be there after school when they get home from school, being able to leave the office and attend some of their events, as well as be able to get back to the office later on and finish up things that are part of a regular business day. That property happened to be in poor condition when we purchased it. We made a $500,000 investment in purchasing the property, renovating it, and then making an addition so that we had room to run the office. The architectural office is a section of the house that sits above the garage. It accommodates several areas for professionals to work. Again, we are professionals. I spent 8 years in college and several years in internship after college before I was even allowed to take the exam to become an architect. It's not an easy process, and that's why not everybody does it. I feel that I do a very good job at it. I have currently multiple projects, large retail developments in Silvis, East Moline, Bettendorf, Davenport, all with different clients. I feel that I'm providing a very good service to these clients. I do a lot of residential projects in Silvis, Bettendorf, Clinton. I do projects across the Midwest, from Kansas through Indiana, Missouri, Minnesota, all over Iowa. But the majority of that work is done by the very few people. I have myself, I have one other registered architect. I have my wife that helps with administration works on duties, keeping everything flowing. And I used to have 2 additional part-time people that, because of this process, I've had to let go. Good Rock Island citizens, voting citizens that no longer have a job because of this process that we're going through. It's a nice professional office filled with professional people. I don't think that that's going to cause a problem to the neighborhood. We're not bringing in riffraff. We're not doing anything illegal. We're actually commissioned by the state of Illinois and by my other 7 state licenses to protect the health, safety, and welfare of all those who enter any project that I've certified as an architect. I'm here as a person, much like a doctor or a lawyer, that serves the public, is in charge of the health, safety, and welfare of the public, of all the people that enter these multiple projects, hundreds and actually over thousands of projects that I've worked on. I would like to address any concerns that I'm aware of somebody that might not be fully on board for this project. Degrading the neighborhood. Like I said, I made a $500,000 investment. The county knows that. They've already reassessed the property. They've already increased my property taxes. I don't see how that has degraded the neighborhood in any way, shape, or form. Safety. We've got professional people driving the speed limit down a 20-mile-an-hour public residential street, parking in my driveway or myself in my garage. Nobody's parked on the street. They're not endangering anybody on the street as they drive in or drive out. They're, careful people. They come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, or will. They'll leave at 5 o'clock at night. They may go to lunch. I have occasionally clients that come in, clients that are spending millions and millions of dollars to develop commercial property, residential property, industrial property. They're not people that you would consider as dangerous to my neighborhood. I consider them an asset to the neighborhood coming in and visiting me. We've been going through this process for quite a while, and as such, with the office complete, we have had a neighborhood meeting where we've invited everyone on the city council and all the neighbors within the area to come visit the house. We had over a dozen people come in, view the property, view the professional office, see that it's not really a dangerous place to live or work or detriment to the neighborhood. So I feel that we've been working with the city very closely to make sure that this project and investment is a worthwhile one for me and the city. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
I just have one simple little, the parking issue. Are you okay with the parking, the way the parking is now? It's been restricted on that?
We were aware of it. We didn't object and come to any meetings and, object to it in any way, shape, or form. We
All right.
didn't
But
send anything.
Is that a yes? We're okay with the way the situation is now with the parking?
It would be nice to be able to have people park in front of my house. Saturday we're having the Gussie Christmas. I have 8 siblings. There's going to be a lot of cars.
But that doesn't have to do with your business.
It has nothing to do with my business.
So
the business isn't there now, so the Gussie family Christmas is going to affect the neighborhood how it does as a residential property.
Special use permit states no on-street parking, correct? It's all...
Yeah, I've got
in
3
your driveway.
garage spaces, and I've got 3 spaces on the driveway.
Okay. Just for clarification.
And
Thank you.
for 5 people.
You're aware that the staff recommendation is to approve your request, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, but it's also approval should be subject to the following stipulations, and they list 5 conditions. Are you aware of those 5 conditions?
Yes, I am.
That's the only question I have.
Yeah, I don't need much signage. I don't have a lot of visitors. I know where I'm at. Like I said, I've got plenty of off-street parking. I don't have the amount of staff that I once had, so hopefully I can grow back into that number at some point.
Very good. Thank you. If there's no other questions with the council, then I would ask, as we're in a public deal, invite anybody else in favor of this that would wishes to speak. Those that are in favor. If you could put your name and address on there for her, please.
The professor took the sheet. I'll do it on the back table.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Hi, sir. James Wilson. I live at 4500 42nd Avenue, Rock Island, next door neighbor to Mr. Gussie. We talked about safety. As we've been at other meetings, safety has improved on that street. As you know or may not know, restriction signs were put up. Restricted parking in front of my house, restricted parking in front of Mr. Primatier's house, and also in front of Mr. Gussie's house. So that corner is now safe. I think that was the goal. That was the intended goal. And so now it's safe. And those signs have been established, and we haven't seen people violating that parking. I believe that Mr. Gussie has complied with all of the requirements, and so I wholeheartedly would ask that you approve his special use.
Were you invited to the open house that he
I
held?
was, sir. My wife went. I couldn't attend because I was ill.
Yeah. Okay, that's all.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's all I have.
Questions from the council for him? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other people who wish to speak in favor? Is there anyone that wishes to speak opposes this? If you oppose, and eventually I need your name and address on that form in the back, but come up here and speak first, and then that's fine.
Not really. First of all, my name is Gary Camp, and my address is 4101 46th Street Court. I am president of the French Farm Condo Association, which is right down the street from Mr. Gussie's property. A lot of you, I think, are aware of what the situation is. We were opposed to this project from the very start. The reason being, when you come off of 44th Street to come down 42nd Avenue, it's a very narrow street. And then you come to Mr. Gussie's property, then you come to a very sharp turn that has very limited liability. And then you come down into our area, which is a dead end. Unfortunately, a lot of cars that come down 42nd Avenue are not aware it's a dead end, so they come around the corner. They can come at a pretty good speed. We also get a lot of neighbors that walk the neighborhood, walk their dogs, bring their baby strollers. Anyway, the city, over our objection, went ahead with the project, and so Mr. Gussie has proceeded ahead. I know he's severed some financial setbacks. It's taken a lot more financial toll than I think he had envisioned. We've had some animosities along the way. I know that you probably all received a letter that shows that there was some hostilities in the past, and unfortunately, some of those hostilities still remain. But I do feel that we are not going to be in a position to object to the granting of this city variance, because I think I do not know what the conditions are. I assume he's got a certificate of occupancy to live there. So I do not know what the conditions are, and assuming he has complied with that, I think that we are not in position to object to the issuance of the variance. I do just wanted to raise 2 points. So I wasn't really for or against. I'm just kind of right there in the middle. But anyway, the 2 points I wanted to bring up, as I recall, when the original plan was submitted, there was a turnaround on the property that was envisioned, and that was encouraging to us because we felt that would help with the parking, and it would also help with the ingress and egress from the property, so people coming in and parking on the property would be able to come around the property and drive out, as opposed to what the situation is now. They would all have to back out, and when they back out into the street, it could cause some problems with people coming from the other side of the corner, possibly creating some problems. So anyway, I did attend the open house. We did see the office space that the Gussies are planning to put in. I did ask Mr. Gussie about the turnaround, and he said they still plan to do that. The open house is this summer. I asked him if he was going to be able to do it this fall, and he said no. I asked him if he's going to be able to do it next year, and he said not likely. So we would just like to know what his plans are for that turnaround, because I think that would greatly improve the situation. The other thing I wanted to bring up is the no parking signs that were put up. The city did a study and they put those signs in, and we really appreciated the fact that those signs were put in. That gave us a great deal of comfort. When I was at the open house, I asked Mr. Gussie how he felt about the signs, and he said he felt they were too restrictive and they make his people walk too far. I would just like to say that we feel those no parking signs are very important. I assume that if there was going to be, if Mr. Gussie asked for a change in those, there would have to be some kind of a meeting so we could put our objections in. We just feel that that part of the whole project is very important. Again, we are still very concerned. We haven't really faced yet him having a business going on, having having people park in the, employees park in the parking area, and then having customers come, I would assume that he would probably ask his employees to park on down the street so that the customers would have access to his house. But those are our two concerns. We'd like to know about the turnaround, and we would plead that you keep the no parking signs in place, because they were very important.
Very good.
And
Thank you. Council have any questions?
So you raised the issue of parking and of having increased traffic in the neighborhood. How much more traffic do you anticipate?
With this business, I don't have a feel for it. I don't know how many customers. I haven't been down to see what his other operation is like, so I don't have a feel.
And
for
with
it.
the no parking signs, since they've been up, have they been violated at all?
Have they been violated? To my, I'm on down the street, so I don't really get a good view. To my knowledge, there was one time when there was a sale that's taking place, and there was a car parked there. A police car came through and ran down the owner of the car and got them to move their car.
That had nothing to do with Mr. Gussie's business. That had nothing to do with Mr. Gussie's business. This was a different neighbor?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah, I have no knowledge of Mr. Gussie having violated those no parking signs at this point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other parties interested that are objecting? Hearing none. Mr. Gussie, if you have any comments further?
Yes, I would like to address Mr. Camp's concerns. The turnaround is still in what we would like to do, and there's still more construction that we'd like to do on the house, but we didn't feel it prudent for us to invest additional money in the property, not knowing if we would have the ability to have our business there or not. So until we get this permit and we get on our feet to move forward, I really couldn't say when that would happen, but it is something that we're very interested in doing and putting in there. We don't have any plans on asking to remove the no parking signs. Like I said, I've got myself, my wife who does the administration work, and one other full-time employees right now, and hopefully a couple of part-time employees in the future. All would have room to park on the driveway as it is and be able to back around in the driveway and pull out forward, which we do as a family constantly. Even my 16-year-old daughter can turn around in the driveway and get a car out. It's not a tight squeeze. As far as violating the no parking, we definitely do not. None of my employees do, because they don't come to the house. I rarely have a client that comes to my office. Typically I go to their meetings or to job sites. Occasionally I have one come to my house at the most once a week. I've been looking at it on my calendar maybe a couple of times a month, 3 times a month, that I would have a client come to me. Typically I'm going measuring a building, meeting with somebody in their office at a job site. Most of the work is not with clients, is not at the house.
Okay. Is there any other questions from the council? No. Just for, I guess, just a point of reference, there was a letter that was submitted. I think the council members, he's got a copy of it from somebody else living in the neighborhood. And that person's not here, and so...
and I was trying to address any and all concerns that I was aware of, so
that's fine.
If I missed anything on that letter, let me know, and I will try to address that as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Oh, is there another? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there another? Okay. I'm sorry. Didn't think there was anybody.
My name is Janice Guidry, and I live in the condo association. And in regard to the circular drive, which I also feel is very important for getting cars in and out of that area, particularly because their property is in the curve, in the circle, where things are narrow. I question the landscaping that has been done by Mr. Gussie's family. they've built a berm and they've planted shrubs and trees. And it almost appears as if, when one looks at the landscape, that it precludes the building of the circular drive. I am not an engineer, I am not an architect, but just looking at the landscaping that they've spent time and energy and putting in, it does look like, given where the garage is, where the extra parking area is, which they use to back out of, and as he said, it's ample enough for them to turn and come out forward. That's only the case if somebody's not already parked on that concrete space. But if somebody's parked there, it does make it a challenge for anybody in the garage to be able to back out and come out forward. And it is simply my concern with the effort put into the landscaping and the appearance that that landscaping will preclude or make it a challenge to put in the circular drive when that becomes a possibility for the Gussies.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to thank Ms. Guidry for noticing that we've been doing a lot of work on the landscaping. We're doing it ourselves. And it might not be evident from the street, but we've got stakes set in the ground that so we know exactly where that circle drive is. I know exactly where the center is. There's a stake in the middle of the yard. There's stakes to the north, to the south, to the east, and the west, and we're deliberately landscaping around that circle drive so that when the circle drive is complete, the landscaping will be complete, and it'll be absolutely gorgeous. As an engineer, I've already got it staked out.
Very good. Thank you. Lost one. All right. If there's no other public comment, I'm going to close the public hearing. And I need to entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the reestablishment of the special use permit as recommended, subject to the stipulations as stated in the report, and refer to the city attorney for an ordinance.
Second.
And I would suggest that before we vote, that will we repeat that motion?
Yeah.
As I believe we had an alderman that just had to step out for a moment.
Second.
Well, in the meantime, I will say, as the 7th Ward alderman, after election, I met with Chuck Austin, previous person sitting in the seat, and we've gone over this issue. I visited with the Gussies. I've toured their place of business. He had an open house. I think in terms of reestablishing this special use permit, I don't see any objection in terms of the stipulations and the agreement, and I thank the Gussies for choosing Rock Island to have a business.
I echo that very much. I've had the pleasure of visiting there also, and very nice setup he has there. And so, at this point, he's all conformed to all our requests in zoning, and he's got the certification of occupancy, and so I think he's worked at meeting the city's requests and some of the neighbors. Still waiting. Council member here. So, excuse us for a pause here.
That's what I was about
We
to
have a first.
say. This is a first.
No, do you want me to read it again?
Right, yeah. Come on, I stir it a little bit. Hey, James, we're waiting for you.
Can't hear.
All eyes are on James. Need you for the vote.
We need you for the vote. We have a quorum.
Motion by Alderman Geenan was to approve the reestablishment of the special use permit as recommended, subject to the stipulations as stated in the report, and refer to the city attorney for an ordinance. Alderman Clark seconded.
All right, so it's been moved, seconded Any other discussion? We need a roll call, please.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
I just wanted to comment before the vote, just to state for the record that it may have been implied that this long delay was in somehow on the responsibility of the council or the city staff, and I just wanted to state for the record that I do not believe that is the case, but I am happy that the applicant has addressed the concerns and worked to correct and restore peace with the neighborhood, and I am happy to see this move along and pass tonight, hopefully pass tonight. So I just wanted to state that for the record.
Thank you, Alderman. Roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Thank you. Congratulations. Item number 10.
An ordinance providing for the levy, assessment, and collection of taxes for the City of Rock Island for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2018, and ending December 31st, 2018. Second reading.
Move to pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item number 11.
An ordinance adopting the budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1, 2018 and ending December 31st, 2018. Second reading.
Move to pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 12.
A special ordinance amending Chapter 15, Article 5, Section 15-61, Subparagraph A of the Code of Ordinances, changing the fuel tax rate from 2 cents per gallon to 3 cents per gallon, effective February 1st, 2018.
Motion to consider, suspend the rules, and pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 13.
A special ordinance amending Chapter 6, Article 4 of the Code of Ordinances regarding ambulance fee increases effective January 1, 2018.
Move to consider, suspend the rules, and pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 14.
A special ordinance amending Chapter 2, Article 6, Division 7, Section 2-289 of the Code of Ordinances, changing the monthly meeting date of the Sunset Marina Boaters Advisory Committee.
Motion to consider, suspend the rules, and pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 15.
A special ordinance amending Chapter 16, Article 3, Section 16-85 of the Code of Ordinances, establishing a wastewater rate increase of 3% effective January 1st, 2018.
Motion consider, suspend the rules, and pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 16.
A special ordinance amending Chapter 13, Article 2, Section 13-25 of the Code of Ordinances, establishing a refuse rate increase effective January 1, 2018.
Move to consider suspending the rules and pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 17.
Claims, A and B. Report from the Human Resources Department regarding payment in the amount of $825 to Durian Builders of Geneseo, Illinois for general liability claim. And B, report from the Public Works Department regarding payment number 5 in the amount of $44,525 to Green Space Associates of Davenport, Iowa for the 2017 sod replacement program for services provided from September 30th, 2017 through October 20th, 2017.
Move to accept the reports and authorize payments for claims items A and B as recommended.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
C, what do we got? C through H?
C through H. Report from the Public Works Department regarding payment number 2 in the amount of $28,213 to Valley Construction Company of Rock Island, Illinois for the GTI Growth Wetland Mitigation Project for services provided from January 1, 2017 through November 15, 2017. D, report from the Public Works Department regarding payment number 2 in the amount of $99,100.35 to Langman Construction Incorporated of Rock Island, Illinois for the 33rd Avenue Court reconstruction west of 17th Street project for services provided from November 1st, 2017 through November 30th, 2017. E, report from the Public Works Department regarding payment number 2 and final in the amount of $36,363.44 to Valley Construction Company of Rock Island, Illinois for the Old Mill Street reconstruction south of 13th Avenue project for services provided from October 10, 2017 through December 7, 2017. F, report from the Public Works Department regarding payment number 3 in the amount of $301,423.93 to Miller Trucking and Excavating of Silvis, Illinois for the Lincoln Court reconstruction, 17th to 20th Streets project for services provided from October 6, 2017 through December 6, 2017. G, report from the Public Works Department regarding payment number 2 in the amount of $22,410.30 to Centennial Contractors of the Quad Cities Incorporated of Moline, Illinois for the 2017 Brick Street Repair Program for services provided from August 25th, 2017 through December 7th, 2017. And H, report from the Public Works Department regarding payment number 2 and final in the amount of $155,035.36 to Walter D. Lawd Incorporated of East Moline, Illinois for the 41st Avenue Court and 45th Street Court reconstruction east of 44th Street project for services provided from September 26, 2017 through December 5, 2017.
Move to accept the reports and authorize payments for claims. What do we do in C?
C
through H.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Due to the nature of my employment, I will be abstaining from this vote.
Roll call.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker abstained. Ship.
Yes.
5 ayes, no nays, 1 abstention. Motion carried.
Item 18.
Claims for the week of December 8th through December 14th in the amount of $2,799,475.18.
Move to allow the claims.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Mabe. Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 19.
Report from the Public Works Department regarding bids for the 3rd Avenue Water Main Extension at 24th Street project, recommending the bid be awarded to Valley Construction of Rock Island, Illinois, in the amount of $154,227.
Move to award the bid as recommended and authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
I'm also abstaining from this vote as well.
Roll call, please.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker abstained. Ship.
Yes.
5 ayes, no nays, 1 abstention. Motion carried.
Item 20.
Report from the Public Works Department regarding bids for the line stop and valve insertion system, recommending the bid be awarded to Utility Equipment Company of Bettendorf, Iowa, in the amount of $49,281.66.
Move to award the bid as recommended and authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents for items 20 and 21.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
20 was read
20 was read.
and 21.
Does it need to be read?
That would be separate.
It don't need to
Well-
be read. Put them together because they're the same motion.
Okay.
There are 2 different motions.
The item.
One was
The item still needs to be read publicly.
20 and 21 are two different things.
They don't have to be read in that case. Well, are they two different?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
So we have a,
I'll be quiet.
Used to work with the old regime.
all right. So we have a motion and a second for item 20. Roll call, please.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 21.
Report from the Martin Luther King Center regarding a renewal of a lease agreement with Two Rivers YMCA for office space in the King Center during calendar year 2018 at a cost of $5,200.
Move to approve the purchase of the property. Am I on the right one here?
Yep.
Lease agreement.
One up.
The lease.
One of us, okay. The lease agreement is recommended and authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yep.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
22.
Report from the Community and Economic Development Department regarding the acquisition of property at 508 Fifth Avenue from Mark D. Griffin in the amount of $500.
Move to approve the purchase of the property as recommended and authorize the city manager to sign the purchase agreement and consider, suspend the rules, and pass the ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
I don't think we want to do 23 again, so we'll do 24.
Report from the city clerk regarding a resolution approving the partial release of the executive session minutes and the destruction of the audio recordings for the same executive session meetings.
Motion to approve the partial release of the executive session minutes as recommended and adopt the resolution.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Alderman Guinan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Talanair.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Item 25.
Report from the Traffic Engineering Committee regarding a request for the installation of a handicap parking space at 1212 9th Street.
Move to approve the request as recommended and referred to the city attorney for an ordinance.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Item 26.
Report from the mayor regarding an appointment to the Sunset Marina Boaters Advisory Committee.
Move to approve the appointment as recommended.
Second.
Moved in second. The gentleman's name is Steve Curtel. $300.
Wes Mayberry gone.
I try to be consistent. So it's moved in. I think we had to move in second, right? Okay, so those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
We are to other business, 27.
Did you have anything to say?
Here with the entertainment. That's we can help you with. Is there any council members wish to say anything? No. I would like to say, wishing everybody a happy holiday, whatever religion you're within, you celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, etc., and New Year's, and please be safe. But have fun, have a great time with your family and friends, and let's enjoy it, and we'll obviously see people in the first part of January. I need 28.
Executive session 5 ILCS 120/2C1, the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body.
Move to go into executive session for the exception cited.
Second.
Move to second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Geenan.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Spargettis.
Yes.
Collinaire.
Yes.
Parker.
Aye.
Ship.
Aye.
6 ayes, no nays. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Marathon meeting.